Right now, exactly 83 miles northwest of the glaring neon lights of Las Vegas, there is a 3.7 million acre stretch of barren Nevada desert where standard physics rules go to die. If you cross its heavily guarded perimeter, armed guards in unmarked pickup trucks have standing authorization to use lethal force. But the real danger was never what they were keeping locked inside those sterile hangars. It was what they were letting fly into the sky. Picture this. August 1st, 1955. The sun is scorching the Groom Lake salt flat, pushing ground temperatures past 100 degrees. Test pilot Tony Levier sits in the cramped cockpit of a bizarre pencil-thin jet with wings so disproportionately long it looks like a motorized glider. He was only supposed to conduct a routine high-speed taxi test, just rolling down the dirt runway at 70 knots to feel the brakes. Then the impossible happened. Without Levier ever pulling back on the flight stick, the wings caught a thermal draft. The aircraft literally yanked itself into the sky, airborne before anyone on the ground could react. That accidental flight was the exact moment Area 51 was born. The jet was the Lockheed U-2, codenamed Aquatone. But to keep the world from knowing the military was building a deep penetration spy plane, the CIA concocted an elaborate cover story. They told the press the U-2 was just an innocent NACA weather reconnaissance aircraft. Think about that lie for a second. While the public believed these planes were measuring cloud formations, U-2 pilots were strapping into pressurized spacesuits, soaring to a bone-chilling 70,000 feet, an altitude where the human blood literally boils without pressurized protection, capturing photo resolution so insanely detailed that intelligence analysts could read a newspaper headline from space. At that extreme altitude, the air is so thin that the pilot was trapped in what aviators call coffin corner. Fly just 2 knots too fast, and the airframe tears apart from structural stress. Fly 2 knots too slow, and the wing stalls, pitching the plane into an unrecoverable tailspin. As Skunk Works' legendary founder Kelly Johnson later admitted, "We were operating on the absolute razor's edge of survival. If the engine flamed out at altitude, you didn't glide, you fell." By 1960, the U-2's reign of absolute air supremacy came crashing down. On May 1st, a Soviet S-75 Dvina surface-to-air missile tore through Francis Gary Powers' U-2 over Sverdlovsk, proving to the entire world that extreme altitude was no longer a shield. President Eisenhower needed a new phantom in the sky, an aircraft that couldn't just fly above enemy air defenses, but outrun them entirely. Enter Project Oxcart, the Lockheed A-12. To build a jet capable of surviving the brutal stress of continuous Mach 3 flight, Skunk Works engineers needed a material that didn't melt under atmospheric friction. The answer was titanium. But how do you build a secret American spy plane out of titanium when the United States doesn't have any domestic supply? You buy it secretly from the Soviet Union, using a network of bogus CIA front companies to purchase the exact raw metal from the very enemy you're planning to spy on. Sit with that ironic reality for a moment. The A-12 was an absolute mechanical nightmare to operate. Cruising at 2,200 miles per hour, atmospheric friction heated the aircraft's skin from 600 to over 900 degrees Fahrenheit. Because metal expands when heated, engineers had to build the airframe with loose fitting joints while sitting cold on the ground. On the tarmac at Groom Lake, the A-12 leaked special JP-7 high flashpoint fuel directly onto the runway, continuously dripping until friction in flight heat sealed the gaps in the fuselage. Over 2,850 secret test sorties were launched out of Area 51, refining a machine that could cross the entire continental United States in under 70 minutes. The CIA even spawned a high-altitude interceptor variant, the YF-12A, capable of firing Hughes AIM-47 nuclear-capable missiles at Mach 3, vaporizing target drones from 36 miles away. But the cost was so astronomically high that the program was quietly killed, pushing the platform to evolve into the legendary Air Force SR-71 Blackbird. Yet, while the Air Force was scaling up the Blackbird, Area 51 engineers were already testing something even more unhinged: an autonomous, supersonic reconnaissance drone called the D-21. In 1964, decades before microprocessors, digital flight controls, or satellite GPS existed, how do you launch an unmanned drone over heavy nuclear installations in hostile territory, take pictures, and bring the data back? You mount the drone directly onto the spine of a modified A-12 mothership, designated the M21, carry it to Mach 3 at 80,000 feet, and ignite its ramjet engine to launch it right off the back of the aircraft. It was a recipe for catastrophic failure. On July 30th, 1966, during the fourth test flight over the Pacific Ocean, the D-21 suffered an engine flameout upon separation. The drone pitched down violently at Mach 3.2, slamming directly into the tail section of the M21 carrier plane and tearing both aircraft to pieces. Test pilot Bill Park ejected safely into the ocean, but launch observer Ray Torek tragically drowned when his flight suit filled with water. The Parasite launch program was immediately abandoned, but the brutal lessons learned over the salt flats of Groom Lake laid the classified foundation for modern autonomous drone warfare. Not every aircraft that thundered over the Nevada desert was born in an American factory. In fact, during the height of the Cold War, some of the most sensitive flights taking off from Groom Lake were flying under the insignia of the Red Star. In August of 1966, an Iraqi defector named Munir Redfa shocked international intelligence agencies by landing a pristine, state-of-the-art Soviet MiG-21 at an airbase in Israel. The CIA quickly struck a clandestine deal with Mossad, packed the fighter jet into a heavily guarded transport crate, and flew it straight to the dry lake beds of Area 51 under Project Have-Donut. Imagine being an elite American fighter pilot invited to a top-secret debrief in the Nevada desert. You walk into a blacked-out hangar, and standing right in front of you is the exact Soviet jet your comrades are actively fighting and dying against in the skies over North Vietnam. Your instructions? Get in the cockpit, fly against it, find out why we're losing. Up until that point, American pilots in F-4 Phantoms were suffering disastrous kill-to-loss ratios. But over the restricted airspace of Area 51, under additional evaluation projects like Have Drill and Have Ferry testing, stolen MiG-17 and MiG-23s, American evaluation pilots systematically stripped away the Soviet weapons' mystique. They discovered that while the MiG-21 was terrifyingly nimble, its engine suffered massive visibility blind spots and choked during sustained high G turns. The classified tactical playbook developed right here at Area 51 led directly to the founding of the Navy's elite Top Gun fighter weapons school, single-handedly turning the air war over Vietnam from a dismal 2-to-1 kill ratio into a dominant 13-to-1 victory margin. By the mid-1970s, as Soviet radar networks grew denser and deadlier, Air Force strategists realized that speed and dogfighting tactics were no longer enough. The only way to survive was to become completely invisible. In 1975, a brilliant Lockheed mathematician named Dennis Overholzer was studying an obscure Soviet physics paper when he realized something revolutionary. Computer algorithms couldn't calculate radar reflections off complex, curved surfaces, but they could calculate them off flat, two-dimensional facets. Skunk Works immediately built a proof-of-concept prototype so bizarre and flat-faced that engineers openly mocked it, calling it the Hopeless Diamond. Its official project name was Have Blue. When the team mounted the scale model of Have Blue onto an outdoor radar target pole at Area 51 to measure its radar cross-section, the technicians in the radar bunker thought their equipment was broken. The radar operator picked up the radio and reported, "The model must have blown off the pole in the wind." It hadn't blown off. The angular aircraft was reflecting so little radar energy that a multi-million-dollar military sensor array literally could not see a full-sized airframe sitting right in front of it. The radar signature was smaller than a single bumblebee, but invisibility came with a terrifying price. Because Have Blue had no smooth aerodynamic curves, it flew like a falling brick. It was so aerodynamically unstable in all three axes that no human pilot could keep it in the air for more than a few seconds. the flight computer had to make over 75 automatic control adjustments every single second, just to stop the jet from tearing itself apart in mid-air. During test flights over Groom Lake, 2 of the prototype aircraft crashed due to mechanical flight control failures, forcing test pilots to eject. But the radical concept was proven beyond a shadow of a doubt, giving birth to the world's first operational stealth aircraft, the legendary F-117 Nighthawk. If the angular, sharp-edged F-117 was the undisputed king of early stealth, its highly secret sister ship, Tested at Area 51, was the exact opposite. A plane so bizarrely shaped that pilots nicknamed it the Whale. In the late 1970s, while Lockheed was doubling down on flat, faceted panels, rival defense contractor Northrop took a radical gamble. They believed advances in supercomputing could finally solve the impossible math of radar reflections off curved surfaces. The result of that gamble was Project Tacit Blue. Picture an aircraft that looks less like a sleek fighter jet and more like a floating inverted bathtub with a single rectangular air intake mounted directly on top of its fuselage. It defied every classic rule of aerodynamic aesthetics. Why build something that looked so absurd? Because Tacit Blue was engineered for a very specific dangerous mission, loitering over high-threat battlefields for hours at a time, gathering real-time target data right under the noses of Soviet radar crews without ever giving away its position. Between 1982 and 1985, Tacit Blue quietly flew 135 secret test sorties out of Groom Lake. It was notoriously difficult to control, relying on a quad-redundant fly-by-wire system just to keep its bulbous, low-observable body stable. But every single flight proven in those desert skies paid off. Sit with this fact for a moment. Every single smooth, flowing stealth curve on the multi-billion-dollar B-2 Spirit stealth bomber, the F-22 Raptor, and the next-generation B-21 Raider exists because this one weird bathtub-shaped plane proved that curved stealth was possible over the salt flats of Area 51. As the Cold War came to a close in the 1990s, the testing grounds at Groom Lake underwent another massive paradigm shift. The human pilot inside the cockpit was fast becoming the weak link in high-performance military aviation. To explore the outer limits of pilotless, radar-evading tech, Boeing built a highly classified technology demonstrator known as the Bird of Prey. Tested at Area 51 between 1992 and 1999, this radical aircraft looked like something straight out of a science fiction film. It featured a tailless, gull-wing design and relied heavily on rapid prototyping materials to lower production costs. The Bird of Prey wasn't just designed to hide from radar, it was an experimental test bed for active visual camouflage, testing specialized skin coatings and lighting panels to blend seamlessly into the daylight sky. And then came the dawn of the operational stealth drones, long before the world ever saw fuzzy photographs of a mysterious flying wing drone operating over Afghanistan in 2007. The aircraft aviation enthusiasts quickly dubbed the Beast of Kandahar. The RQ-170 Sentinel was logging hundreds of secret flight hours over the restricted airspace of Nevada. Commercial satellite photos of Area 51 caught distinct bat-winged silhouettes parked outside newly constructed hangars years before the Pentagon ever officially uttered the drone's name. Area 51 had shifted into a new era, one where the skies were governed not by human reflexes, but by silent, invisible algorithms. By 2014, commercial satellite imagery revealed that the landscape of Groom Lake was undergoing its biggest expansion since the Cold War. Construction crews threw up Hangar 17, a massive structure featuring a 210-foot door span, large enough to easily house an airframe bigger than anything Skunk Works or Northrop had ever openly built. So what exactly is soaring through the blacked-out skies of Nevada right now? First is the legendary RQ-18, known inside defense circles as the Great White Bat. Engineered by Northrop Grumman, this massive ultra-stealth unmanned aerial vehicle is designed for penetrating contested airspace at 70,000 feet, taking over the deep reconnaissance role that the SR-71 left vacant decades ago. Then there are the 6th generation air dominance test beds. Under the Next Generation Air Dominance, or NGAD program, pilots and autonomous flight systems are testing hypersonic concepts adaptive cycle engines, and collaborative combat aircraft. AI-driven escort drones that fly alongside manned jets, acting as autonomous wingmen capable of absorbing enemy fire or executing precision strikes. Every single game-changing aviation advance of the last 70 years, from high-altitude photo reconnaissance to curved stealth flying wings, was secretly flown over a dry lake bed in Nevada before the world ever knew it existed. When you see something unexplained in the night sky, it's rarely aliens. It's usually Lockheed or Northrop, 20 years ahead of schedule. But there is one aircraft tested at Groom Lake in 1989 whose classified dossier remains 100% redacted. It was codenamed Senior Citizen, a stealth transport ship designed to land where no radar could ever look. And according to newly declassified flight logs, it never officially landed back on Earth.